Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. It is Markets in the Morning. Let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Welcome to Markets in the Morning. Today is, I don't remember how this intro goes. Welcome to Markets in the Morning. Today is October 15th, 2025, and this is Markets in the Morning, where we take a look at the price action of the cryptocurrency market, including the Bitcoin price chart, the altcoin market, metals, gold, silver, the dollar, US dollar currency index. And of course, we take a look at any type of financial news or crypto news to get our day kicked off. I don't know why I struggled with that. All right. I need to go back and listen to it. I don't know. Usually just rattle that off. Anyway, welcome to Markets in the Morning, everybody. Oh, it's Wednesday. Let's not forget this. I totally forgot this last week. Keep it a little light, tight, and bright to kick off the halfway point of the week.
It is Wednesday, my dude. It is Wednesday,
All right. Hey, guys, what's going on? Thank you all for tuning in to Markets in the Morning. I appreciate you all being here as we go through the charts. Oh, of course I did that. No, I did not. Stop that. Get out of here. All right, it's going to play the frog. There we go. I'm rusty. I'm very rusty. I got a lot on my mind, right? We got a lot going on in the market, and that's just what it is. Obviously, we're getting together after a chaotic week last week as the markets closed out on Friday, and we saw a lot of price action happen here in the cryptocurrency market. As stocks sold off to close out Friday, silver closed above all of its all-time highs, and then the second that futures markets closed, right? Typically, markets close at around 4:30, right? 4 p.m., 4:30 p.m. And then, come 5 p.m. Eastern time, that's where the futures markets close. And, as the futures markets closed on Friday, the crypto market took the cue and went for the nosedive and the biggest liquidation that we've ever seen in the cryptocurrency market. And those, of course, were things that I was a little concerned about and worried about happening in the market. And so today we'll, of course, look at everything through the lens of just where we're at right now. I'm sure everybody is noticing that Russell 2000 today, so we'll talk about that too. But of course, we have to take a look at really what kind of damage has been inflicted over here at the cryptocurrency market at the same time and paint a picture, right? So the things that we were dealing with for the weeks leading up to this was that the picture was not lopsided in like the bull's favor, right? Some of the things that I like to point to are confluences, and when things are positively pointing in one direction, then coming on here and expressing it and being bullish and being crazy and wild about pointing at that, even when typically I'm getting a lot of backlash from, no, we're going to go lower, we'll dip here, then we'll go there, then we'll go up. But and typically it's people just wanting to get bids filled. But when you're lopsided one way, it's easy to come on here and be a big bull. But then when you have a lot of mixes and you have a lot of things kind of going the other way, right? We didn't have a perfect picture lined up in there. And like if you had to point at it on how it looked, I almost say like 8 out of 10 things were bearish. And you had a couple of things that you were looking at like favorable, right? Of course, you're like thinking, hey, man, that Russell could break out. You got that Bitcoin dominance that's really favorable. But then, of course, we had all the bearish divergences, the double bottoms and the DXY, silver breaking out, all of those different things. And those were all casting that shadow of doubt of, things. There's not like this perfect confluence happening in the market. And then it just like right on cue, which was crazy, right on cue. If you remember in Markets in the Morning, I was being real vague. I was like, pay attention to the next 48 hours, right? And that if we're going to follow just like how these cycles have been happening, we would see the biggest liquidation ever is what was going on in the back of my mind. And then, wasn't 48 hours. I'm glad I didn't do it, because then I get people saying, see, you said 48. It happened in 56. But it happened, right? And it's not something to celebrate, right? Like, at all. So I don't want, I think what people tried to do is characterize me. They want to make me the capo. You want to make him the bad guy and things like that, right? You want to see him lose because, he's not on our team. But the point of me coming on here isn't to necessarily be on anybody's team. The point of me to come on here is to try to present the data to you. And, you're, at the end of the day, you're the one over there who's hitting the buy and the sell button and the holding and all that different stuff. And I'm never going to tell you to do anything. I'm not going to tell you to buy. I'm not going to tell you when to sell, but I'm just going to try to present all the data. And so after going through all of this, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to present all the data of where we kind of sit right now, and just try to paint the picture where we are right now. Because we're in a new environment now, right? Like, we've gone through the major liquidation that has happened. And so that was the big scary thing lining up. And that's what also makes this market very difficult too, because and I talked about this. I think I talked about it in Markets in the Morning last week, right? Or at least in a video last week. It's kind of a blur. That was a crazy couple of weeks for me. But like in 2017, we would kind of break a support and you would say, okay, I need to go make a bunch of decisions really quick. And you could run and you could go hit the sell button on everything and get everything kind of lined up. And then, things would kind of crash over the course of a week or two or three. And in 2017, that's kind of what you got. But you don't get that anymore here in this market. You get it that when supports break, there's so much leverage in the cryptocurrency market that it gives you literally no time to react. So you almost have to really make those guesses way ahead of time, and that's so difficult to do now, because you have to do it before the supports break and bet which way if the supports are going to break or not. Because the second that they do, what happens? Boom! It just gets absolutely annihilated in this market, and it's a big pet peeve I have about this market of how many people use leverage. And the irresponsibility of it, and the destruction it causes to the market in here. And so, as I've always stated, doesn't matter how good you are, leverage is going to get you at some point. And I think everybody saw that last week. And I do sympathize with people. I don't celebrate any losses. And it's not like I nailed this perfectly. I was 50% out of the market. I still have 50% in the market, right? So, whatever, it's, I'm not right. It's one thing to be like, I'm 100% out, perfectly nailed it. I got somehow is capital preservation, right? So now we're in a new environment and figuring out where do we go here in this new environment, and trying to paint that picture of just where we are. Is it a clear picture, right? Do we have everything lined up one way, saying one thing? Do we have one thing lined up the other way, saying another thing? Or are we still left in that extremely mixed puzzle again? And I'll try to present it that way. And I'm sure people want me to come on here and be like, be super bull, please, dear God, be super bull. And then, and at least don't be super bear. But it's, the picture is still mixed, and I'll present it with that. And just be fair and honest and balanced on trying to present it in here. So, how should I, like I did last time, I think what I'll do is I'll phrase it by like giving the bulls their piece, because this is going to be the first thing people are going to ask me right here. Is they're going to say, what about this Russell 2000, right? So when this Russell 2000 opens, we've got a big old candle shooting out of there. And that is fascinating, right? Because we know historically that's one of the key elements that the cryptocurrency market does need, is to get that to happen. When this does open, though, we're going to see, Russell 2000, if it opened right where it's at 2525, that puts it right there. 2530 is, of course, the 4.236 extension of the Great Financial Crisis. This is a target that, when looking at it, if you could probably go through every single video I've ever done, there's never been some major target up here, like into the 3000s for the Russell. The big concern has always been in these areas. So while we're getting a move in here, certainly want to see follow through come through for the bulls, right? So for the bull case, you're going to want to see that the Russell not only just keeps going today, keeps going tomorrow, and then into Friday, and then closes the week up, right? Like the range that I've always guessed on the Russell 2000 was 2550. So we're almost there, right? But we do know that historically that's a mandatory requirement for the cryptocurrency market. So bulls have that in their check mark, right? So that alone right there for the things that we're going to talk about later is going to again be why you're not going to get me to be like, I just try to remain fair and honest. Like you can't be full bear, but you could sure argue it. You could argue it, but you don't have a perfect argument because of this. And another thing that you don't have the perfect argument for to be full bear is for Bitcoin dominance, right? So the Bitcoin dominance goes back and it slams the 702 retracement in here. And then not only does it slam the 702 retracement, it slams the 702 retracement even of this range. So of both ranges during that massive liquidation, you have the Bitcoin dominance go back and slam both the 702 on both ranges, the short term and on the long term range. That liquidation was a throwback, and then it comes right back down, right? So you have the Russell 2000 breaking out, and you have the Bitcoin dominance do that throwback. And like we saw this happen with, remember when we were looking at XRP versus the total market cap back in 2024? This is what happened. And then it kerplunked, and that was XRP skyrocketing from 50 cents to $3, right? So for the bulls, this is their case and in their corner, right? This and what the Russell is doing, right? What you wouldn't want to see, of course, is the Russell hit this 4.236 extension and roll over. But I'm trying to be fair and give that to the bulls corner, right? And so that's where, just like where we were in our last environment of being like, do you have everything perfect, right? And these two things say, like, do you have everything perfect to say this is a bear market, right? And these two things would imply, no, you don't have it perfect, right? And so that's where you are on those. But there are a lot of things that favor bear market. And so we have to go through all of those things too. But in the end, right, what we're looking for is confluences, right? And what you're going to find at the end of this is you have a lot of things that point to bear market. And then you have like a couple of things that say no. And you remain right there in that middle ground where most things point to bear market, but a couple of them imply differently. And so I'm just going to try to paint that picture, right? And so I'm still in 50% cash. I haven't bought this dip. I need a clearer picture to emerge for me to feel more comfortable because of the things that I'm about to show you here pretty soon. So there you go. Bulls, I know you wanted that. I know you wanted to see that. And I'm sure this right here, you like seeing that, right? And so fair and balanced, there you go. That's that side of the equation. Next, though, we got to look at it through the other aspect of what's really happening and how everything just kind of transpired in the market. The things that always happen during every single market top. Can you tell me what happens for those who have been through past cycles? What happens at every bottom and what happens at every top? At every bottom of every market cycle, the crowd's always looking for lower, right? We know that. And so a lot of people here may not have been through the 2018 bottom, but a lot of people here were in the 2022 bottom, where we bottomed at about 15,700, 16,000, but the crowd was looking for 10 to 12K. You remember that? That was the consensus, and that was the major number that influencers were using and the crowd was using, and that was getting put on every one of my videos and in markets in the mornings and everything like that. That 10 to 12K stuff lasted for a year. But the same thing happened, of course, at the top back in 2021 when we topped out at like 69K, 68K. The crowd was looking for 100, right? And so what we always know is when we reach major inflection points, the crowd is typically on the wrong side. And they're typically violently on the wrong side when that ends up happening. And so right here, where was the crowd on this? Violently on the bull side, right? And we know that they're violently on the bull side without even having to like look at their portfolios and know what their spot positions look like, simply because the leverage wipeout told us the true story. There was insane amounts of long leverage, which means spot buyers were also massively long at the exact same time. So we definitely were in an environment where everybody was all long at the exact same time, which would look like to be an upthrust after distribution in Wyckoff distribution, right? So that would check mark what a top would look like is that the crowd would be completely wrong-footed and offsides during that time period. So we have that, of course, at our levels that we would be at. Other things that would imply, without being speculative about crowd behavior, but looking at it from chart perspectives of what tops would look like, would still be that, if you recall last week, what were we looking at? We were looking at the bearish divergences on the daily time frame, right? And I showed that even on the last video that was posted before the liquidation happened on Friday, showing the bearish divergences emerging onto the daily time frame on the altcoin market, and that we had like 4 bearish divergences, and it was kind of crazy. When we zoom out and look at the weekly time frame of Bitcoin, we have a long-term bearish divergence that has happened in here. And of course, we still have this one happening in here, and this thing is pointing down, and that stochastic's way down in here, right? So our weekly time frame is bearish, and this is not, this is less subjective or talking about like crowd behavior, how is the crowd and things like that. This is just charts, right? So this is just simply showing you what are the indicators doing, right? And then here's our next new high right in here. So we could see on a long-term time frame, you have the bearish divergence. And then here on the short-term time frame, we have the bearish divergence when a new high is set over in here. So we have these divergences happening in here. And even with this new high, we're not able to get enough juice for the MACD to be able to scoot its way up. So on that time frame, right, that still sits there. We did that back in 2021. And this, of course, is what I was implying when we were talking all last week and doing not last week, 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about, we're doing bear week and we're talking about Q4, right? Everybody's cheering for Q4. This is going to be awesome. This is going to be great. And I kept saying, why are we skipping over what happened in 2021? Why are we only talking about Q4 that happened back in 2017? Because we're mimicking what we did in 2021, but that's not what Q4 was. Q4 was actually bad. And that's where, we talked a lot about this type of stuff. This is what Q4 truly looked like back in 2021, that it eventually completely annihilated itself. And, we've done it really exactly on time. This is exactly how Q4 was in 2021, right? And there's your annihilation that ends up happening right in here. After these rallies take place, there's your Q4 annihilation. And that was the hard part about going through that, is that the crowd was really focused on 2017 and just would not look at it through the lens of 2021. So, we're left with that. And so, right, I started by saying, here's the Russell, that's interesting. Here's Bitcoin dominance, that's interesting. Those are things in the bulls' favors. But let's talk about things on the other side of the equation, right? We still have the weekly divergences happening over here on Bitcoin. We did just do the flush of it being exactly like Q4 2021, right? And so when this happened in Q4 of 2021, what did it mean? It mean we were going to go into a bear market for a year, right? What happened when Bitcoin was flashing these things right in here? I meant we still had a year of a bear market ahead of ourselves here in Bitcoin, and that would transpire over into the altcoin market at the exact same time, right? Looking at XRP, of course, breaking this floor, these are the things we talked about in Markets of the Morning a lot over the last couple of months. Getting through that 618 retracement, that would be the ultimate breakdown. It not only gets through it, it annihilates through it, right? So that was truly the breaking point for it. So it gets through it and crashes and crumbles the second that it gets right through that 618 retracement, just like all the other versions of it that we looked at, whether it was Hedera, whether it's Cardano, right? This is exactly how it went. For both of those assets, for Hedera and for Cardano, when these types of structures were created and these new highs were set in, they did both lead into longer prolonged bear markets. So we've now done price behavior in here that also mimics what happens when you start bear markets, right? Looking over at total 2, the things that we talked about when it came to bearish divergences over on the indicators, right? The thing that we really harped on here is taking a look at this MACD, that there was a very clear thing that happens in here, that we hit doom breaking through this, but we had one example in there of a trap, right? And so of course everybody cheering, it's just going to be a trap. It's just going to be a trap. And so what do? We end up now getting the real cross through there, and we get the big fat liquidation to come through, just like we have 4 times prior. Massive liquidation happens after that occurs, right? So you get that. And so, but we're past that moment, right? So it's not about harping on that. It's now about kind of looking forward and saying, well, what comes next? We don't care about that anymore. Now we want to know, are we going to recover from here and move our way up, right? And that's why we look at Bitcoin, right? Those things, not favorable. H-bar, when we did this type of stuff, it wasn't really favorable. You know, when you do this isn't really favorable. And then when you do a massive liquidation, right, off of heights, right? So the bulls, of course, want to lean on the idea that, hey, this is like C19, right? This is like when we do this right here, right? Now, of course, this is Wyckoff accumulation. This is being down here for like a year and a half, and then we double slam into the floor, right? And so when we have the C19 sell-off and the C19 liquidation, we're slamming into the floor here for a second time, and then, of course, we go on in for a long bull run. That's not the same context here, right? That would have been this moment right here when we're in Wyckoff accumulation, which we obviously went through on this channel for a long time, right? So that this is coming off of a peak, right? This is coming off of a top to produce that type of liquidation. And so we can go back and look, you know, what happens during these time periods. Every single time these dooms show up and these massive liquidations occur, what happens next in the market? And so we have 4 examples we can go back and look at, right? So this is the first sell-off that happens over in here, right? Massive liquidation, and then it settles and goes back down into the lows for a few months, right? This one sells off, right? It goes through the doom. It has the massive liquidation. These are about the same size. So this is a 28% liquidation, which is what we did see over here on total too, was a 29% liquidation happen in here. It settles, right? It's able to hold itself up here for a little while, but then it does go into a prolonged bear market. You look over here at this one, right? It liquidates, holds itself, but then what do we do, right? This is November. This is April. 7 months, right? 7 months of just trending down right in here, right? Then we have this one that happens right in here. It liquidates, and then it holds itself for a while, and then it does go back down and actually goes down below those lows. So typically, whenever we have these massive liquidations come off of incredibly high prices, we do tend to continue drifting down, right? That's just kind of how it goes. That's not my opinion, right? Which I know the social media world loves to create it as like, this is a capo guy. This is just data, right? So these are the things that have happened in these 4 circumstances that we've seen. The interesting thing about this one occurring where it's occurring is because we are flashing the same behaviors as if it was the peak of the market for Bitcoin back over here, with prolonged bearish divergences and these crosses happening over here for Bitcoin. So you try to kind of, if you were going to try to pick a moment in time of where it's occurring at, it most represents this moment back in here for Bitcoin. And the timing also, and that's of course because we see the bearish divergence here on this weekly time frame of the drop in the MACD over here for those crosses to happen. And then the timing is of course coincidental, but that this was the same behavior of Q4 of 2021. So that we actually did the exact same altcoin behavior that we did back in Q4 of 2021, and you know, that is what it is, right? So that's just kind of where we sit currently right now with the information present to us at this time. The hard thing too here is for XRP, right? And so everybody wants to debate, you know, is this thing, and I'm not here, let me just say this, I'm not here to call where the bottom of this thing is going to get found on XRP, whether that's going to be that we're just going to stay stuck in this range for a long time, right? Or if it's going to act like these assets, and if it is going to go down and go all the way back down to the lows again. I'm not here to call that because I could present both cases. I could say, hey, look, it's acting just like it does when it does do that. But I could show you the example. The thing was with Tron. Tron back in 2022 did not. So let me see if I can pull that up in here. Is that what I have? I have it right here. So we can go in this circumstance right in here. If you recall, when we were in this environment. There was a debate whether or not that even if the market could capitulate, that XRP could still actually hold this floor, that this floor would actually be held. And I, of course, had egg on my face because it didn't. It went right through it. But it wasn't crazy to think that it could actually end up holding in here because Tron did hold that during that time. And so we could show you this. XRP. Whenever it wants to load. Right. So while XRP goes breaking through this floor right in here, Tron does not, right? It still just stays in this range. And so this range just remains. So it's difficult for me to sit here and say, oh yeah, it's definitely going to break down from this floor when we have seen examples of it where it doesn't, right? I'm not going to make a call on that on if it is or if it isn't in today's environment until something can kind of manifest itself and give kind of a clue. But I'm sure people would want, make a call. I can't right now. So that's kind of where you're at. But here's the issue with XRP2 to kind of point towards those things that you don't want to see, right? And that is, we do now have divergences in here, right? So now we do have a weekly time frame RSI that has taken out that floor from back there in June. So now we have actually gone below these levels, right? So while price is still well above them, we do have a divergence below. In addition, what's also happening over here on this stochastic RSI on the weekly time frame, right? We set a higher price over in here on XRP, but we just don't have as much strength happening in here. And obviously now we're really starting to roll over in here. Similarly to what? Q4 2021, where we're rolling over aggressively in here. And this thing is pointing straight down in here after not having very much strength during this time frame, right? And this again is what time for Bitcoin during that secondary rise, right? So during the Q4 rise for Bitcoin, where it creates a bearish divergence distribution process happening in here. And that's where all of this happens in here. And so what do we just get right now? We get potentially distribution over here on Bitcoin, and we have the exact same thing. Again, pointing to, yeah, definitely Q4. Just not 2017 that everybody pointed to, more like 2021. So that still lingers in there right now on the indicators, right? And this isn't, me morphing data or trying to create a story, create a narrative. This is just the data, and this is what it shows. So that's not favorable. So we could look at the Russell and be like, yeah, let's go. We can look at the Bitcoin dominance and say, yeah, let's go for sure. Like those things look good today. Like today they look good. But when we go out and we look at all these other things, that picture isn't the same over in here. So when we look at everything and we're trying to make confluences of the market to paint the picture of it really being lopsided one way and lopsided favorably, we unfortunately don't have that. And the problem with the Russell getting out and this massive liquidation happening in the cryptocurrency market is the crowd is offsides. The crowd is definitely cheering. This is a C19 moment, right? Reflect back on what always happens in this market. And we've talked about it a lot on here that, when we're in these rises and the crowd is scared, that's usually okay, right? We know, and we've said it the whole way up, we know we'll be beyond the top when the crowd isn't scared anymore and they're happy with the dip and they're buying the dip and they're still cheering for it to go higher. And I'm concerned we're in that, and that there's a lot of cheering for it to go higher and after such a big liquidation. And typically after liquidations like that, we don't do that. Typically after liquidations like that, we peter out for some time. Of course, the thing that people would like to point to is C19, when we were deep in a bear market for 2 years and we double bottomed, but that's not where we are, right? We're 4 years into it. October 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever it was just the full length amount of like Bitcoin cycle length. So it's not like we're like just getting through block reward halvings and we're double bottoming way over here, and then the liquidation happens from here. It's happening off the highs, and so that's the concern in there. And so where do we sit right in here? You sit with a mixed picture again. You sit with a picture where a lot of things point to bear market, a lot, right? And then and then of course, right, what do we have? We have the DXY, right? DXY double bottoming. And then how are you supposed to interpret and process what is happening with gold, what is happening with silver? That silver can go through this, and the second that it closes right there on that Friday, 11 minutes later, the cryptocurrency market liquidates. And those things that I said, I was like, what is going to happen if this goes up here? I don't know, right? I don't know what's going to happen in the market if that occurs. And we got to see. So how do we process that and say, here we go, we definitely know how this transpires to the cryptocurrency market? And the reality is we don't. We don't have a blueprint for that and what that means and what this is telling us. And is it good? Is it bad? Is it scary for equity markets in the long run? Find out, right? Gold obviously continuing to rip, right? Is the wave count wrong? Is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Is it going to chill out? Until it does, then it's not favorable for crypto. So things that, like, of course, we need to see gold chill out. The DXY say, forget all of that, and then just go kerplunk on it and start setting new lows. We've already got the Russell starting to poke out. It's got to keep going, right? This Russell 2000 cannot stop right there, right? It's got to keep going. It's got to show that it's nothing, right? That's the great financial crisis. It's our last real recession for the market. We got to show that that's not going to be a problem up in here in this region. And then somehow crypto's got to recover after such a big, massive liquidation. And it's not common to recover like that after those massive liquidations very quickly. And that's really where we're at. We have flashed all the same signs of Q4. Exactly. Everybody was right. Q4, 100%. Problem is the market wanted to ignore which Q4 it was. They wanted to paint it as being the 2017 Q4. When it was really flashing the signals of the 2021 Q4. And so that's the things that we talked about a lot leading up to this, is that I was really mimicking that of 2021. And now we're left in the aftermath of it. The aftermath of these types of situations typically does lead to more continued downside. It does. But you don't have a perfect picture because you have the Bitcoin dominance and because you have the Russell 2000. Those are the things that are still in the bulls' favor, okay? So to paint it that way, to say the bulls still have that in their favor. And so I'm not coming on here to say 100% with gloom and doom, I'm selling all my bags and I'm running away because I've got 100% of my things pointing to it to say it. I'm just saying 80% of them are in the bears' favor right now. The bulls have a couple of them. And in order for that to go their way, those are the things that kind of got to flip. And so we'll be monitoring it, but it's hard to really, I started this by saying, things that we look for is a bunch of confluences, right? And when things are really clear and lopsided to one side, it's mixed. It seems to be more in the bearers' favor, but the bulls have a couple of things on their side to still kind of hang their hat on, to not be like, it's game over yet, because they still have those things. But when we look at all the indicators and all these other things, none of these warnings have disappeared in here at all. And that's just going to kind of be where we're at for right now. And yeah, so that's that. So I forgot to pitch it that it's newsletter day, right? I usually release the newsletter on the 15th and the last day of every month, but I released this 2 days early again to get this data out there. To talk all about a lot of these different things that the market does need. This one includes a 30-minute write-up. So that's on blockchainbacker.sub, 30-minute audio recording. That's on blockchainbacker.substack.com. But all right, yeah, that was supposed to be at the very beginning. But anyway, so there you go. That's where you do sit with the market. I don't cheer for, and I again, like, it was a real rough week for me doing X. the platform is very tailored towards people just wanting to get Hopium. I think that's all people want when they log on to X. And so that's why there's a lack of information on there. Just give Hopium. And so that was an exhausting week. I don't know what else to say about that. But yeah. All right. We'll jump into news. Treasury Secretary Bessett says a stock market decline won't deter the U.S. from taking strong action against China. Cool story. U.S. Bitcoin and Ether ETFs rebound as Powell signals rate cuts. Bitcoin metric shows euphoria as 112K price squeezes new buyers. Democrats counter U.S. crypto framework bill grind to a halt in review. The devil takes Bitcoin. A wild history of Mt. Gox and the Oracle problem in politics. There's actually one more chart I want to go through that I forgot to do that. So let's just get through this nonsense really quick. How to use Google's Gemini to research coins before you invest. Fuda migrates its national ID system to Ethereum. Bitcoin mining stocks rebound after Trump's tariff threat sparked market turmoil. Stocks in Bitcoin in the AI era, which will survive the next 50 years. And mysterious hyperliquid trader is doubling down on their Bitcoin short. Okay, there we go. The cryptocurrency news and analysis. The news version of this is now done. Let's move over here. So this is another thing, at least in its current shape, again, favors towards the bears, and it shows a lot of the concerns that I had over the last week to kind of show you just what Wyckoff distribution does look like in here, and where we would be today. So I think it's just important to look at it, hate it or love it. Let's get the snipping. All right. We're going to make the whole thing. Okay. All right, so this is others. This is the altcoin market, excluding the top 10. And what we're going to do is go through Wyckoff distribution. And what the argument would be is that currently the market sits about right there in its current state currently right now is what the Wyckoff distribution model would suggest of where we are today. All right. So going back to July all the way through now, that we can pretty much label every single phase. And once we get through these, I'll hop into the chat because we're running out of time. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. Okay, so this starts out as our preliminary supply. Oh, wait, no. There we go. Preliminary supply. And our buying climax. Our automatic rally. And our secondary tests. Then our sign of weakness in phase B. All right, so we put a line here on our buying climax. Then we go into our up thrust. And you see this would be our up thrust after distribution. If I can get that to fit. There we go. All right. Oh, I got to put a line on top of our up thrust here. There we go. And we come in for our last point of supply. And now the argument is where we are today. Where are we right now? Right? What you could argue, what I think you would argue in here is the wick just doesn't mean anything. It's just a liquidation wick. It's not where price is ever accepted at, right? Prices did accept here and here. So we know that prices were willing to accept in these levels without it being a liquidation, because these are 4-hour candles. So we even settled here at these prices for hours. So like 12 hours we were willing to settle in right in here, which of course comes in just shy of our sign of weakness in phase B, right? So just beneath it right over in here. Now, when you look at it from Wyckoff distribution in this model, we can see that it does accept just below the sign of weakness in phase B over in here. And then the last point of supply, again, finds its way back to where the automatic rally took place, right? And so here's our automatic rally, and here's where we are currently right now. And so you could argue, even in Wyckoff distribution over a 6-month time period, I guess it's not 6 months, right? What is it? July, August, September, October, 3 months, geez. That we are just in the last point of supply still for it to still continue lower, which is also backed up by things we're seeing over in here, things we're seeing over in here, things we're seeing over in here, that these tend to still continue to drift down after the doom liquidation ends up happening, but things do continue to drift lower. The thing that does happen quite often, though, after these major liquidations happen, is like we can try to say, well, how much time elapsed, right? Look at this amazing reaction that has happened here in the market. It's really great, right? This lasts about a month, right? So there's a major liquidation happening in here, and then it still kind of hangs out in this region for about a month and then lets go of itself. This one happens here. We still hang out here for about a month, right? This one happens right here. This is about 2 months. And then finally it goes in for another bigger liquidation later. This one has big liquidation and then still hangs out here for about 15 to 20 days in this area before then continuing lower. So it's not unusual to see that happen there and to see it just kind of hover for a while. And so you probably saw me post over there on X and talk about ranging behavior. We could be here for a couple of weeks. There'll be plenty of time to talk about it because that's typically what ends up happening. So there you go. That's your whole picture of where you are at. It does appear that you are in distribution phases still over here in the altcoin market. The liquidation candle that happened in there was probably just that. Not a whole lot of price acceptance that happened in there. However, you are still acting as if your last point of supply is happening right in here in a Wyckoff distribution, and you're just kind of hanging out in what? Sign of weakness. So we're still kind of stuck here. And so you got the Russell looking okay, right? We'll see how it does here. It's there, right? We'll see how it is. You know, my guess was always like 2550 was the number. So you have that favorable. I'm not going to discount that. Bitcoin dominance, again, still looks favorable to me for the altcoin market. So don't want to dismiss that. But I do want to paint the picture from the other aspect of it as well, as we don't have confluence everywhere to say that too. So you don't have confluence all on the bear side. You don't have confluence all on the bull side. And again, if this is just if this is going to be a rejection for the Russell 2000 up in here, right, there's your answer. I mean, your answer is plain as day, right? Is the crypto market giving a foreshadowing warning of what's going to happen for the Russell up in here? Or, you know, which way is that happening? So it's not a clear picture. I still sit in 50% cash. I guess technically it's like 55% cash now after that. My current holdings are worth less. But, you know, that's just kind of where we're at right now until a clearer picture can emerge, right? And like I said in the video that I posted on Monday, prices can go higher to negate those things. If prices want to go higher and take away a lot of these scary things that are showing up in here on these charts, and then that's what forces me to feel more confident, I'll take it. But it's hard when you have all of that in there at the exact same time to sit here and say, I'm just going to plow money in here while those things sit there. I need a clearer picture. I need something to convince me otherwise that that's an appropriate thing for me. So it's still a mixed picture. That's the best thing I can do for you, is try to paint it for you and show it to you in that way, that it's a very mixed picture. I'd say like 8 out of 10 things favoring the bears. And then the 2 things favoring the bulls, it would be the Russell in its current state today. Of course, you would want to see a continuation on that. But it's still really hard for a market, especially the cryptocurrency market, to be able to recover quickly after a liquidation. And we're talking just $2 billion, $5 billion. Those take a lot of time for this market to recover from. This was 20 billion. This is not baby money, right? This is the biggest in the history of ever, 2 times the largest ever. So those typically take a long time to recover from. So it would be real shocking to see it recover really fast. But if it did, that would be something I would feel more comfortable with and more excited about and sharing with and feeling more confident being bullish on. Because if it did recover, of course, then what are the things that end up happening, right? These things probably start to change, right? Like, how often do we see these things flip over? These things flip over. And then if this went like that, right? Like that would be different. And I'd say, hey, wait a minute. Things are changing on these indicators that look pretty good. And if we got that, then I'm like, okay, I can feel more confident and not so scared. But that's how it is, right? So we'll see. But typically, what do these things usually mean? These things mean a doom candle of a liquidation happens, and we got it, and they typically drift for a while. So I'm sorry for those who wanted to tune in and get a super big bullish video. I love you. I appreciate you watching, but I think you'd rather tune in for me to paint the picture as clear as I can. And so that's what I tried for here. So I hope that worked. 46 minutes, and I got to get through the chat in 14. So I'm going to go ahead and say I can't go through individual chats or individual charts that are asked. I figured that it would be more valuable if I provide all the information that I see over here on the charts for you guys, okay? So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the support and super chats and hanging out in the chat. But I wanted to put as much information out here as I can because I wasn't here yesterday on the channel, and this kind of gives you a clearer picture of just where we are right now. All right, Chief Tane Blackbeard, as always, coming through strong with 50 memberships, brother. I appreciate it so much, man. And you never say much. You can't leave a message when you do the gifts, can you? You can only do that, and that's it. Man, thank you again, as always. Mount Guyful. It feels like November of 2021 crash. People are asking where alt season, and it can't be over. Bots are calling moon. So much manipulation with Binance. I'm out with my gains. Thank you. Well, the angle we kept presenting it from was Q4 2021 and how the indicators pointed to that. And so that's, of course, where I took it on the chin a lot, was just pointing to the indicators and showing this is, yes, people are right about Q4, but I don't know why people are not pointing to the Q4 it looks like, which was 2021. Mod Barber, you presented both cases well and care for the past month. Which case would you slightly lean more towards, like 60-40? I think I presented that, and it's hard for me to put a percentage on it. It does seem that the bears are in control, but the Russell is an interesting curveball in it right now, right? I think we all agree that's an interesting curveball, but when you look at the behavior and the liquidation and everything like that, it looks like the bears are in control in the cryptocurrency market. There would have to be some things happening that would alter all these indicators to make that look differently. And if that happened, then I'd be willing to change my perspective at the same time. Robert Barker, hey BCB, after a completed crashing structure, what normally occurs after a crash structure, and how often does it lead to a 4.236? It doesn't. I don't consider it to always lead to a 4.236, but it typically will get you back into the retracement levels. It'll typically get you to the 618 and 786 retracement levels. But there are times where it doesn't. Cardano was a really good example where it really presented what looked like a crashing structure back in November of 2021 that never did. So if you go look at the top of Cardano where it looks very much like this. Do I have these on here, please? No, this is the wrong one. It would be this one. This looked like it would be it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Rolls up to wave 4 within wave 5, right? Boom, 7. Boom, boom, boom. So that was a trap. right? You don't commonly see that, but that was a pretty dang good one of a trap. Blockfella says, "What's up, BCB? Thanks for everything. Always, you're the goat. What's up with Alpha Beta Soup? Is he Metashackle? Voice is exactly the same. God bless you and the family, the channel, and his community. Chart line, not candles, looking good." Blockfella, thank you, brother. I don't know who Metashackle is. I don't believe that's him. I don't believe so. Chris Cushman says, harvest season, figs for days. Yes, we have been eating figs almost every day. Thank you very much. But it's funny though, because like they're very seasonal in regards to, you know, some are earlier and some are later, and it's like a really big window of like 4 or 5 months. But we have one in particular that's been producing very well. We've been eating that flavor a lot. I wish there were other flavors that were available right now, but it's still good. Bulldog 589 gifted 5 memberships. Brother, thank you. I appreciate it, man. Michael Fatboy Slim Dell, thank you, man. He says, do I have to accept the fact that it's highly probable XRP loses 50% of its value from here before any probable upside? If it was downside, is it possible that it's just short-term bearish, drop to $1.20, and then up to a $7 or $8 target? Right. So that's kind of what we talked about earlier, and that's going to be the big mystery right now. It's hard to see anything pointing towards it shooting up anytime soon. It would be shocking. It would like the indicators just don't point to it, right? Whether or not that means that $1.40, $1.30 floor, $1.50 floor, it just becomes the place it just kind of waddles along like Tron did, or if it's going to pull an H-bar or a Cardano move. It's really hard to tell right now. And you could speculate on it. I remember I speculated on that the floor would hold back in 2021, and it didn't, but Tron did. And that was frustrating and annoying because I was like, well, this is what I saw. This is why I thought that, but it didn't matter. It was wrong, right? No, you're just wrong. Idiot. It broke, right? But Tron didn't. And it was like, well, this is why. Like, I saw it from this angle, but it didn't matter because Tron held and XRP didn't. So it'll just depend. I don't know. XP Market says, happy birthday, blockchain backer. Thank you so much. Joshua Dubin. How many birthdays? That's it. That's all I got. Joshua Dubin, thank you. You saved my profits. Now I'm feeling stuck in cash. I don't want to buy all-time highs for things like silver, gold stocks. Crypto hasn't improved expansion. HYS account, 4% max. What next? Yeah. I mean, I'm just enjoying some 4% APY, right? 3.5, 4% APY cash. You know, it is what it is. CS comes in and says, Russell 2000 now. He's breaking the news. I know, man. We've been covering it the whole time. All right. There we go. So rut, right? So this is kind of where we're at with a rut. See how things go. And this is in the bull's favor. But boy, very, very, I don't know. Like, that's the thing I have for anybody to ask themselves, right? And so that's the data you got to go find. Because I don't see it. How do you make the biggest liquidation in history off the highs and then become a bull market right away? Where does that happen at? Right? Like, where do we be at the highs and then liquidate with the biggest liquidation ever off the highs and then go into a bull run? Because again, like just like back then, just like 2 weeks ago, where everybody's saying Q4, and I'm like, yeah, it's like this Q4. I'm like, yeah, it's like this one for sure. Now everybody is, of course, skipping all that. They're like, no, not Q4. March 2020. Like, are we just picking arbitrary points? What are we doing here, man? Did the indicators look like they did at Q4 or like that? I don't know, man. Right. So that's the crypto specific problem now, is that it's got this stuff. All right, I got to move fast because I'm supposed to be out of here in 4 minutes. I'm certainly not, so we're going to fly. Gator gifted 5 PCB memberships. Gator, thank you, sir. And then Sir Nerve says, with the Russell still setting new all-time highs and crypto lagging behind, how do you think the Russell will bust out and crypto not being able to follow? Right, so this was a long time ago. This was 45 minutes ago. I'm pretty sure I answered all of that. The problem that crypto is dealing with on its own after that liquidation. JJ Jacob says, you're getting tricked, BCB. There will be another liquidation event early next week before a parabola. I'm bullish like never before. Oh, it's not that I'm getting tricked. I'm not getting tricked. I mean, this is the thing. I was like, being up here and taking profits and getting yelled at. Like, I didn't get tricked. Zeno again, what do you plan to do with your remaining 50% of the market? If you think it's going down from here, you're selling on a pump to resistance. Yes. So, right. So, like, for me, I got to go through these things fast. I am eyeing to see if I want to get it to 65. I'm still waiting for if that's going to end up happening or what that's going to look like. Right now, I don't have information to be able to fully do it. But it probably does get there unless something crazy happens and it fires up. Dave's got, hey, BCB, big flip-flop on the Russell. That's all you spoke about for 6 months. Now it breaks out, but it doesn't mean anything anymore. How come? We completely discussed. You just had the massive liquidation in the cryptocurrency market. And if this ends up happening to be the struggle in here, that becomes the problem. When a market does this, when a liquidation like this happens, it doesn't tend to recover quickly. So you got a couple things in your favor, guys. That's fine. But you got all those other things too. But when that type of damage gets inflicted on a market, there's not many examples of where it comes back quickly. Tony Wynn, I'm tired of winning. Make it stop. Millman, thoughts on Friday's level of liquidation? Orders of magnitude higher than historical levels affecting the charts. That liquidation is not typical. Right. That was devastating to the market. Ahmad, so let's say we go into a bear market now. What happens to Bitcoin dominance? Does it go back to the top again, or does it go to 80%? That's the $1 million question, right? So that's the unknown. It favorably points for altcoins, right? It favorably points for altcoins to do well, but there's bearish divergences throughout the whole market, and we just had the biggest liquidation in history that typically points down, right? So there's a conflict there that even I am not quite sure how to interpret and process that conflict that happens there. Chills, treating this as if we're in the start of bear where around DC XRP low, if the Bitcoin bottom goes, I think we kind of covered this. Treating at the start of the bear where around DC XRP low and Bitcoin bear bottom going by what would have been the top for each, like 360 or 126K. This has always been the blueprint for Bitcoin. Right? This has always been the blueprint. Right? And that would be my first target if it got there, right? It goes back into these bull flags, into this exact level right there at 69K. Con L, with stochastic RSI hitting such a low, any chance that it indicates it's a reversal with a chance to pump XRP before the end of the cycle? I think it's going to go that low just regardless of that level of selling. It was so massive in there. But it doesn't mean we won't just kind of peter out and run sideways for quite some time. The problem is, like, and again, people want to back me into a corner to make a prediction and pick it like for you, right? It's complicated, right? That's why I said I got 50% cash. I sit there. I'm 50% long the market, guys. I'm in the market, right? But I'm also sidelined some because it's not a perfect picture. If you want a perfect picture, I don't have it. I just don't have it. I think people want to go on Twitter and they want people to tell them it's going to go up, it's going to be super mega bullish, and then you ask them, hey, can you explain that to me? And then there's no explanation. Because that's what happened just now, if you didn't notice that. There was literally no explanations for why Bitcoin was going to fire to the upside. Anywhere. And I paid attention to that whole week. Where is all these bulls that have all these explanations of where it's going to fire to? Where's the chart and the evidence of it? Because what I did was provide data. No one was given data. No one. Just saying we're going up. And what happens? Oh man, it went the wrong way. Now we're going to go up. Why? Where's the data? Explain it. Still, no one is explaining it. So here's the picture. It's complicated. George, good morning. Something very interesting. Top 20 RTY stocks are insane runs, even before the push to all-time high. Thank you, brother. Choose Mo's. I looked at the total over SPX chart and it looks bad. Thank you, brother. Adrian asks, hey, BCB, can XRP at 305 again during this ranging? So if some majestic crazy thing happens because the Russell's firing up and XRP in the altcoin market just surprises with some push up much higher, then probably. But if it's in a bear, it's unlikely to go that high, right? It would likely stall out somewhere in that range, right in there. I'll take some of this off in there. If it's in a bear, right? I would think if it gets through there, right, then we're back into better context in here. That would be more favorable for upside to happen in here. But the resistance levels are probably going to be somewhere in there. I would think 269 to 287 is my best guess on where, if it was a bear and it was stuck, that's the area it would get stuck at. Bushcamp Dad says, thank you again, BCB. Thank you. Bushcamp, you were fully sidelined, right? I think so, I remember. I think you had said you had went full sidelined. Kevin Miner, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Bassem El Kadri, member for 11 months. Why alt not spiking with Russell? Because we had a massive liquidation, guys. I think people aren't realizing that. I think there's a lot of hope. When you liquidate like that, it damages the market. Brilliant. Silver has multi-decade cup and handle with a rounded bottom on the handle. Russell 2000 has a V-bottom handle. I've read that V-bottom handles are early indicators to not trust the formation. Do you put stake in that? No. No, because I've seen lots of V-bottoms go very parabolic. Very, very, very parabolic. Bull the Barker says, given all the bear signs, there's just something you're waiting to see before making the decision to move more into cash. Forever Lurker, much love, bro. I think, I spent a lot of time thinking on what that number was that I wanted to be at when we were in here. At first, it's 33%. Then I was really thinking about, is it really enough? Is it really enough? Is it really enough? And then we got that pop and it was like, okay, we'll do 50. That'll be it. I still have the mixed, feelings, probably like everybody else. It's like, should I be buying the dip here? Should I not be? And, when you're having those conflicts in there, and the picture's not perfect, right? You got the Russell doing its thing. You got that Bitcoin dominance, man. Like, I'm telling you, people want to paint this picture that he's the capo, he's the bad. Nah, man, I do sit there and process those things and think, why are we doing that, right? Why is that happening? And then it's like, then having to be realistic and not do what social media wants, what gets the clicks, what gets the attention, what gets the crowd riled up, gets the likes, right? We're going to the moon. When the indicators all point the other way. All the indicators do, right? And so that's the thing, right? So like the Bitcoin dominance and the Russell, like they point up, right? But all the indicators point down. And so there's a conflict in there. And I think if I was going to do it, I'd need to have something where I just felt more like I could risk manage it better if I was going to get out of it. Where like there was a bigger move higher where like, I just felt like, okay, if this thing carries away from me, I think it'll come back down there again and I can just rebuy them or something like that. But down in here, I think I could feel the pain, right? That if it kind of like does something like this, that I would feel a lot of pain in there and question. And then if the Russell's still going, if the Bitcoin dominance is falling, and I'm just like, oh gosh, did I make the wrong decision here? Now that puts my average right somewhere like there. And here we are, we're back at my average. Have I done things wrong? So I just don't feel comfortable at a spot here. I would have to be at a place where I'd feel like I could, that even if it broke through, that I'd get an opportunity to get back in. And I don't feel that right now. So that's not, just not right, not yet. He says, Basson says, when you sell 30% more, what indicators will push you for that? I'm not going to sell 30% more. So that would put me at 80% out of the market. I don't anticipate ever getting to a point where I'm 80% out of the market. And so people need to also understand that about me too, that whenever I'm like fully super bearish, I'll still be in the market. Just so you know. Why? Because what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? Holy cow. Even I know how to take risk management against myself being wrong? What? So, I don't think I'll ever get to that level. JP, thank you, brother. I can tell he's playing. Can you tell the market to get over it and just pump? I think everybody feels that way. So I got to run, guys. We're at the end. Do you plan to hold XRP through the bear or cycle into something like Bitcoin? Right. So I would tell you this, like if I was like fully convinced this was a bear, I would have already reallocated the whole portfolio differently. I would have already put it, and I explained this in my 50% video, that I would have put it all into Bitcoin. Not all, like just reallocated it to where Bitcoin's the heaviest thing in there. And so I'm even explaining this. People want to fight me on this and be like, how can you be a bear when you see this? I've even like explained it in my videos of when I go to 50% cash, like probably the right thing to do is to go to Bitcoin and tighten it up into Bitcoin. But I haven't done that because of this thing. So like, I'm even acknowledging that and making actual decisions on my portfolio to recognize this, that this dynamic still sits here and how bizarre this is right in here, right? So I would get Bitcoin heavy and feel more confident about it if this thing just spilled down. If it would hurry up and spill down, then I'd feel more confident about it and be like, okay with it. But with it being this high, no, I haven't done that. I'd have to, and that could end up being detrimental to my remaining holdings by not doing that if this thing never comes down, right? But the monthly indicators give you that curveball, right? And so I'm acknowledging all that, you guys who are just like wanting to, I don't know what you're doing. I'm acknowledging this. I taught you this. Stop. Right? Like, I get it. And I have not gone Bitcoin heavy because I still see this. And I don't know if that's going to be a detrimental mistake that I make by not doing it. But I've done that because this resides here. And so it's just whether or not that ends up doing anything. We'll see. But yeah, I'll always still hold some XRP through a bear no matter what. Dude, I'll hold XRP down to 50 cents. Right? Some. Down to 50 cents, man. Like, I don't think it's going to 50 cents, but I would. All right. That's it. I'm wrapping it up. I hope that you all are doing well. I hope you appreciated the views. I do get it. Like, we all want to hear everything very positively. You got the divergences on here. It's just the environment that we're dealing with, guys. So, I will cheer for everybody. I will cheer for this Russell being some type of early sign and that the crypto market rips to the upside and then all these indicators just completely change. I'll cheer for that. Until then, we got to respect what they say, right? And that's what they say, and we'll see if things end up changing. So, all right, that's going to be it for this one. Check out the newsletter posted just 2 days ago over here at blockchainbacker.substack.com. Please like the live stream. We have 1,000 likes on here. We get that up on 3,000 viewers. I really appreciate it. But that'll be it for this one, guys. We'll give you the frog on the way out the door. And then I wish you all a wonderful Wednesday.
It is Wednesday, my It is Wednesday. Dude.
All right, that's it, guys. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Ed the Metalhead, member for 28 months. Sorry, I'm a little late. Wen Moon. Thank you, brother. Oh, no, I did it. How do I keep making this mistake? Get out of here. I'm done. That's it. We're done. Thank you all so much for watching. If you could, please like the live stream and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.